So my presentation today is taking a step back. It's kind of a reflection on what we do as technical communicators, why we spend our time doing that. Now, I think this title actually is probably a bit misleading at this point in time. So there's a bit of a backstory as to how the presentation I'm going to give you today ended up being the presentation that you're going to get today. So put another way, this is going to be listening to me ramble for about 20 minutes, 40 minutes. Wait, an hour? No, 40 minutes. So what happened here is that through the process of things that happen, we lost a couple of speakers, and my 20-minute talk became a 40-minute talk. Briefly, it was a 60-minute talk. I declined that particular offer. So if this is a bit odd for the amount of time that it is in, I'm going to blame it on that. All right. So why did I want to talk about this today? So one of the things that I think that I see a lot is that we spend our days really down in the weeds. I do. I think many of us do. Each one of our jobs has a very technical aspect to it, whether or not we are UX designers or technical authors or whatever it may be that we're doing. And because we're spending our time doing the things we have to do, I think it's rare that we are able to step back and kind of move away from this tunnel vision that we have just to get our daily work done. So I'm not really trying to impart any really actionable information, or I really wasn't when this started. Now, as I went through and turned this into a 40-minute talk, I think I may have broken that part of my presentation, so I apologize if it is no longer just a relaxing chat about why we're technical communicators. But I do still think that it's an interesting step back from what we do, and maybe a bit more philosophical than most of my talks. Most of my talks are generally highly technical and probably not all that interesting. So where this started was I was having a conversation that I have with my family about once every 3 months, where they ask me what it is that I do and what our software does. And this is a continuous conversation, probably because I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it. So this time around, I thought I'd give a really concise answer. I said, our software helps technical communicators better produce product manuals. And they kind of said, oh, okay. And that was the end of the conversation. So I figured either they got it or they didn't want to know anything else. But as I was thinking about this, and this was actually in a car ride, so I'm silent and now listening to country music and that kind of thing, so I started thinking about my answer. And I started thinking, that's a really unfair answer. Not even just so much for what our software does, but realistically for the technical writer part of that. Because I started thinking about our different customers and the people I interact with on a day-to-day basis, and the idea of just saying that we help technical writers produce product manuals, it didn't feel very genuine, because I don't think that's what we do. I think that's a part of what we do. I think that's an aspect of our jobs, but I don't think it is the entirety of our jobs, and especially not in 2016. So this popped into my head. Technical communications is the art of one-way mental connections. So it's this idea that what our job is it's to take information out of one person's head and stick it into someone else's head right when they need it. And in the past, we've been writers because, well, that was the most effective way of doing this. I think in a lot of ways it still is. But all we had to do in the past was produce books, and books were the medium that we used to accomplish this goal. But this has really realistically been our goal, right? So we're trying to impart information to people. We're trying to do it in an efficient way. And that information is almost always taken from a subject matter expert or someone who has a lot more expertise in a particular thing than we do. So I want to contrast this with some other types of content creators, just because I think contrast brings clarity in a lot of things. So if you look at people who create marketing content, I think that most of the time they're trying to say something and have as many people hear it as they can, and hopefully they believe it. So my visual for that looks a little more like this. But when we think about what we're doing, is it's taking these bits of information, and it's really just having this movement that we're trying to accomplish. So it can be really straightforward, but this is our goal. So then I started thinking about the people who are involved in this and how we go about this process and all those types of things. So like I said, I thought that saying that we're just technical writers was not encompassing any longer. So what are we today? Who are we today? Well, I think we're a lot of different things. So I think we're linguists, I think we're developers, I think we're strategists. I like this information cartographers one. We build maps for DITA and it helps people find their way through the content. I thought that was clever. We're content managers, and of course we are still writers. So this is still a major part of the job. But calling us just writers, technical writers, that term, I think it's a lot like calling musicians guitarists. There's always going to be a guitarist in the band, but a band is made of many different people who all come together to create something that's wonderful. And I think that's where we are today. So together, we're technical communicators. This is what we do. And I also like this definition better because being technical communicators, I can use we, whereas I'm not a writer. That is not my strong suit at all. So I'm not going to be talking about any of the better things around writing today. And I like that. I like the idea that this is a multidisciplinary field now, and I can be part of this, and I perform a function that is not technical writing, but it is vital to this field being effective and being really vibrant and good for the people that were in it. So if we're technical communicators, and I'm part of this, and we're all part of this as UX designers and everybody else who's here today, the next place that my mind naturally goes is, how can we be better at this? What makes one group of us better at this than another group? So, this is something that I often try to think about is, like, what are the incremental improvements that we can make? And to make those improvements, we really have to start quantifying success. We have to decide what looks like success. And I think that we quantify success in technical writing at a very granular level most of the time. So we think about reuse percentages, we think about proper structure, we think about being able to get manuals out online, those types of manuals out online, I meant on time, but also online. We think about those types of things, very deadline-driven, cost-centric type of setups for technical communications. There's nothing necessarily wrong with those, but those aren't the types of success that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about success that is quantifiable in a more general sense. So I'm going to draw a contrast again. This is the last time I'm going to bring marketing into this, but it's really easy to quantify marketing success. And I think this is oftentimes why marketing is able to capture more attention and budget when they're looking at buying software, performing efforts, all those types of things. It's super easy to know if marketing is doing what they want to do. I mean, impressions. I mean, you can measure that really easily. Marketing qualified leads, website traffic. These are things that I'm not in marketing. I think some of us probably are in here actually in marketing, but you don't have to be in marketing to know that you can measure those things, especially in a web-driven world. And it's super easy to see those numbers go up. So this is all you have to do to prove success in marketing. But it's not as straightforward when you're talking about your end user impact, how this is really affecting someone's life in technical communications. It's a little less clear. So, using the example of just impressions, if a marketer gets 5,000 impressions on a blog, she is successful. Now, your blogs may be much more well-frequented than ours, but that's a good number for us. So we can point at a blog and say, 5,000 hits in a month, you did an awesome job, great. What if a content developer who's creating technical content gets 5,000 impressions on a help article? I have no idea what that means. Did we help 5,000 people? Did we annoy 5,000 people? If any of these people were helped, were they helped in the most efficient way? Were they helped completely? Just the idea that somebody read our content doesn't really mean all that much. So I think we have to use a different measure of success. And I think this is oftentimes why we go to this idea of just using the structural aspects of success. How much reuse do we have? What does it cost to maintain this content? All those types of things. The things that are really focused on the process of creating the content as opposed to the impact we're having. But looking at the impact that we're having, what I want to do is a thought experiment that I've done for a long time. So I used to do judo. I don't anymore, but I did judo for a long time. And when I was doing judo, I always like to think of the perfect practitioner. I like to think of the person who, if they were performing this throw or this movement, how would they do this perfectly? How would it work in every scenario? How would they account for these different types of things? Like someone who had been doing this for a long, long time, and maybe they've been doing just this one movement, what does the perfect practitioner of this particular skill look like? So I try to do this, or maybe I just happen to do this, in many areas of my life. So when I'm thinking about the best way to do something, I try to think of how would the perfect practitioner act here? How would I define that? This is something that really helps me go down the road of unpacking what it is that my goals are. So I have a definition for TechCom. My definition for TechCom is one who creates a system that instantly provides correct answers to all questions for the target audience. There's a lot in that sentence. So instantly provides correct answers. So that's the idea that the minimum amount of time is taken for someone to have the information in their head to the questions that they're asking for your target audience. So your content has to be highly efficient from a deliverable perspective. So we're talking about whatever the mechanism it is you use to provide this to your customer. It has to be accurate, so it has to be correct, it has to be up to date. It has to be efficiently ingestible, because you might be able to provide someone a book as fast as humanly possible, but that doesn't give them their answer all that quickly because it's not all that ingestible. And the target audience is just to contextualize a little bit. That makes it more to our field. But I do like this definition. I think this works reasonably well for what it is that we're trying to do from a customer perspective. And I also really like the visuals that I get from this. So I kind of picture someone like on a job site and they're looking at a crane and they're like, oh no, that thing won't slide right. How do I fix that? And their iPad's like, oh, just replace this bearing. And you're like, oh, okay, great. I picture someone using software and they're like, oh, where's that button? And the software goes, boop, it's right there. There's a lot of different examples. I also really like the idea of somebody like working on a circuit and there's, what is the value of the resistance for this? And someone yells 47, or their phone or something like that. So this gives us our spectrum. We have the perfect practitioner on one side, and we have not good or whatever on the other side. And we're probably all in the middle somewhere, obviously, because this is clearly unachievable, and nobody spends their time coming to these if they're not good at what they do. So what our goal is to move along the spectrum just a little bit. So if we can be here tomorrow, what is a digestible, achievable small step that we can take that moves us along the spectrum a little bit further to the perfect practitioner, to that person who is able to deliver content instantly, correctly, right to the person who needs it. So that's a tall order. Let's unpack it. So we go back to what we want to do. We want to take that bit of information, we want to move it from the subject matter's head over into somebody else's head instantly. This is fantasy. We clearly can't do this because we are not wizards and we can't just extract things from people's minds and stick them in other people's. So what do? We build structures. In the past, again, these have been books. Today, they're usually some other type of item. Books can be books too. But we structure this information in a way that people can navigate it. And we kind of hand this process off to other people. So once we build these structures, we then go and we add user interfaces to them so people can access them. We have search, we have browse, these are the ones we're common with. And then we have structures that are more tactical in nature. Anybody who's seen any of my other presentations knows that I love this. So we have different ways of delivering content that are more built into applications or whatever it is we may be doing at that particular point in time. And because we can't be there directly, we have to rely on these passive systems that we set up and structure to deliver our content for us. So now when I think about these things, what I know, or what I believe, I think what I believe is more appropriate here, is that anytime somebody uses one of these systems, there are going to be one of 4 results. An answer will be instantly found. So this is clearly our best result. This is when somebody goes and they type something into our search box, and boom, it's right there immediately. We don't have to wait. Everything is just right in front of them, and they have enough context in the search result that they know that's the one they want, and they can click on it, and it's just the right number of steps, and perfect. They get exactly what they want. And I think we all achieve this some percentage of the time. So this is the real world best case scenario, is that we are able to provide some type of search or other mechanism, maybe context-sensitive help, something like that, that provides an instant answer to our target audience. Then there is the second case. There is the answer eventually found case. So this is probably the most common case that we see from a success perspective, right? So somebody comes in, they browse, they look through a table of contents, they search, they've tried a couple of different searches, whatever it may be. They move around our content, but they eventually end up at that end result, which is that little nugget of wisdom or the answer to their question that they're looking for. Then, of course, there is the answer not found case. So this is the case where they come in and they move around and they leave, even though our content is in there. I think this is probably a pretty common case for a lot of us, too. So a while back when I was working on some very search-specific things, I did a little experiment with myself where I just opened up my notebook and I wrote hash marks down every time I searched for something anywhere. And I put a hash mark down on a found it and a didn't find it column. I did this for a couple of weeks. Now, I know this is very ironic in the context of the slide. I couldn't find the numbers. It's been a few years. But the actual success rate in finding that at the time was less than 50%. It was in the 40s somewhere, which, if you go back a few years, probably actually would be considered pretty good. But today, I think that's probably mostly a failure case. So that means that either I was asking a lot of questions of different systems, Google, whatever it was else I was searching that didn't have answers, or more likely I wasn't finding them. So I think this is really common. And then, of course, the last case, the answer doesn't exist. This is a completeness case, and this is always going to exist to some extent. There's no such thing as a complete set of content, but it is an interesting case. So going back over this again. Search and find immediately. Search and/or browse until the answer is found. Cannot find the answer through search or browse or other mechanisms, and no answer exists. So we look at these different cases, and I think it's pretty easy to agree that number 1 is a success case. And I'm going to go out of order here. I think it's also pretty easy to agree that number 3 is a failure case. And it's very obvious to agree that number 4 is a failure case as well. Number 2 is more interesting. I couldn't think of a symbol that said maybe a success case, so I put a little green check mark there. So I think if this happens in the right way, it's a success case. And you end up at good content in the end that does what you want it to do, then it's a success. I think if it takes too long and the content that you end up with or the answer you end up with isn't a good one, it can be a failure case. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So to interact with these different cases, we'll gray that one out because clearly that's not one we need to worry about. There's really 2 different ways that we can improve these. We can improve our findability, or we can improve our total coverage. So now we've been able to break down these goals. We have the different cases that our users interact with, and we have 2 different ways of improving them. And this is something that I think we can improve upon. So taking a look at the improving total coverage case first, and you're going to notice that I have a little error in my animations here. Improving total coverage is this number 4 case. And I think this is a really interesting case because most of the time, we don't know when this is occurring because we're not measuring this. Or, well, maybe you guys are. So for people who are publishing content in a way where it's possible, how many people are measuring the who are measuring these cases? Are you interacting with support and reading through their questions and chat logs? Do you have a process for getting questions out of the support system? Anybody? Okay, so we have a couple of people, so that's good. Is that for people who are doing that, are you doing it with phone support as well, or just chat support? Just chat support, which is, I mean, a lot better than nothing. Most people are doing nothing, honestly. Not surprising that we have some people who are a little bit more advanced in this area. So, but this case is really interesting because there's a number of things we can do here. And I want to tell a little bit of a story of something that we did at one of our customers a while back. So it's less known, but sometimes we do more custom type work in certain situations. This happened to be one of them. So one of our customers is Allstate Business Insurance. They're a big insurance company in the United States. And the business insurance realm will insure you if you're like a bakery or, I don't know, an auto parts store or whatever it might be. And they had this case where they had a lot of people calling into their customer support, and their documentation was just a mess, and they didn't want to spend money on support as much as they were, all these types of things. So they came in, they worked with us and one of our partners to go and improve the situation. So the goal was basically to improve reduce support costs for business agents, a really quantifiable goal. But a lot of it comes down to this. So the first thing that we did as a group was that we went and we actually read through the phone support logs, and we identified, actually the first thing we did was we converted their PDFs to easyDITA, and we published them in a way where people could actually search and find them. The next thing that we did was we went and we read through their phone support logs. And what we found was, out of the questions these people were asking, there was this handful of questions that were being asked just all the time. And most of them had fairly simple answers. Some of those answers existed in the old documentation, but nobody could find it because it was in a PDF. Anybody here an insurance agent? Awesome. Insurance agents will not read PDFs. So that was not an effective way of delivering content to them. So once we had that broken up and we identified those things, we could really effectively target the cases where people were asking these questions. Now, some of them also didn't have any answers to them, which is this case here. We didn't know that these people were asking these questions. And this case was happening every single day. And it was costing them money, and it was frustrating people. And people were waiting as they were getting quotes for business insurance and all that kind of stuff. So the simple process of doing a review on the phone support questions that came in and the logs on that, they do this like continually now. Like once a month they'll read through them and they'll see if there's anything in there. It's a much smaller job on a monthly basis than it was initially. Gave us this insight into what was going on there and allowed us to make this huge improvement to everybody's experience. It made everybody's lives a lot easier. So this part of the process is, it's an aspect of kind of being a detective. So using that same example, what we did it from a continuous improvement perspective, besides reviewing the chat log or the phone support logs, was we went and we designed some things into the search experience for their portal that made it automated for picking these things up. So now when somebody wants to call phone support, they click a link in the support portal. If somebody wants to get to chat support, they click a link in the support portal. They have both options. We don't hide them by any means, but we make it part of the process of moving through the support portal. And what that means is that we're able to capture a session, and we can watch somebody walk through and have these failed searches that eventually ends up in a support request. And we know that when someone clicks that link, that we need to go and look at what they were doing there. So if it's just some off-the-wall question, you ignore it and you throw it out. And we actually have some filters set up for that. So like really long questions, we don't look at them. But if it's a question that is new because they rolled out a new product or something along those lines, there's a very good chance there's going to be repetition there. And then they can tune their search engine to actually respond to this. So this simple idea of watching what's going on inside of their user interactions allowed them to start going in and identifying this case. So your clues are going to be different, but it's like being a detective. There's a way to go and interact with the things that people are doing inside of your content and your environments that are going to give you clues as to what's missing and what can be improved. So the takeaway here isn't that you should go and do what we did for Allstate. What you should do is you should go and think about what are people doing? What's their digital footprint look like? What does their behavior look like that we might be able to pick up on some ideas that we could then use to improve our content? The next one is the idea of improving findability. So these are these other two cases. So in some ways, these are a little bit more straightforward. In some ways, 3 and 4 are actually pretty similar because that same process of watching search results and watching what people are searching for and what they're not finding allows you to potentially address those results using taxonomy and other items in your search system to generally improve the experience that people are getting there. So that gets a little bit more nuanced. But the idea there is that if you're doing that investigation work, you should be able to capture when people are not finding what they're looking for. So it's really this ability to find these exit conditions that are failure cases that allows you to go and make improvements there. And then getting back to the one that we considered to be potentially a failure case, potentially a success case, this is something that's, I think, very organization by organization. You have to look at how people are interacting with your content. You have to go and listen, and you have to decide, what is important here. Are these things successful? What can we look at? How many searches is too many searches? What is a session time that's too long? Can we ask our users about this? Like, was this helpful links? They work sometimes. I think that they work in certain contexts and not in others. So the last thing that I want to talk about from a findability perspective is something that I think is kind of interesting in the general world of search right now. So if you want to know something, what do? I search Google. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so this next question, this question works really well in the States. I don't know how it's going to work here. If I want to buy something online, what do you search? I search Amazon. Anybody else? Well, see, that's interesting. So that's usually a pretty unanimous yes with the people that I know. So there's a difference here in that Google has a magic search that's a really nice general search, but what I do, and what a lot of people that I interact with do when they want to buy something, is they go directly to Amazon. And why is that? I think it's because Amazon has provided a search interface that's really custom tailored to what you want to be doing when you're on Amazon. So when you think about how you search on Amazon versus how you search on Google. When you search on Google, you punch something in, and if it's not in the top 5 results, it doesn't exist, right? When you punch something in Amazon, let's say I'm searching for a monitor. I put monitor in. Well, okay, I guess it probably wants to be like 36 inches, right? I want it this brand, and I want it to have all these colors, whatever it may be. And I start to facet down, and it pares down. So it's asking me questions. It's allowing me to move around this. And the beautiful thing that Amazon has done here is that these little extra questions that they're asking me there, this interaction, this isn't magic. This just doesn't appear out of nowhere. There are people that create those things for different products, and they program those in. So there's basically librarians categorizing this stuff on Amazon. And I like this example because the default search is always Google. So you're always trying to beat Google. If you search for your content through Google, that means that you're not providing a strong enough search. And Amazon is an example of an organization that provides a better interaction because they know how their customers move. They understand this process. They understand this process, how their customers move through their content, which is products in their case. And they've built an interaction, a user interface around this that is superior to anything else. Now, it wouldn't be a superior general search for things on the internet, and it doesn't have to be, but yours doesn't either. So when you think about what you're delivering, you should be better on your home turf than Google. That should be your goal when you're thinking about success from a user interface and user interaction perspective. And I like Amazon as an example of that because they have proven that they can be better than Google on their home turf. So I think if you go and you look at your users and what they want from your content, that you're going to come up with, I'm going to guess there's 60 people in this room. You're going to come up with 60 different answers, and I think that's right. I think that if you think a search box that looks like Google is the right choice for you, that Google's going to beat you. But I don't think Google needs to beat you. I think you can provide a better overall experience. And that experience may look a lot like Amazon, but it may not. Your experience, the best experience you can provide might be a table of contents and a reference manual because your users really know how to flip through those pages, and it's right there. Like, that might be the way that they experience things. So listening and knowing your users and watching how they interact with things, these are the things that can contribute to improving your overall base of content, improving your findability, and delivering a more successful final product to the people that use our content as technical authors. So that's my message to you today.
Okay, everyone, do you have any questions to Patrick? I've got one here.
If you don't know by now, I'm Aaron, and I'm at Dolby.
Hi, Aaron.
I'm an easyDITA customer, and I'm curious, how many of you are easyDITA customers? Okay, now look around, see who's... Actually, stand up. Look around, see each other's faces. Those of you who aren't standing, these are the people you can talk to find out why maybe you should be standing next year. Thank you, Patrick, for making a cool tool that helps us do our jobs. It's not the only cool tool. There's another one out there in the lobby. Yep. There's a bunch more. Yep. Thank you for sponsoring the Best Content Conference.
Thank you. And actually, thank you guys for putting this together. Piotr and Gosha, and I'm sure other people that I don't know about, did a really wonderful job putting this together. I want to say that I've been to a lot of content conferences, and this one, in the way that it's been done, is just phenomenal. It's got some of the best energy, some of the best people here, and I will definitely be back next year.
I know, right?
Woo-hoo! Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
I actually do have a question for you.
Cool.
What is it you wish we would get about what you as vendors are up against?
How long do we have? Yeah, apparently an hour. Actually, I think there's another speaking slot. Can I just keep going?
There's lunch coming.
So I won't stand between you and lunch. I know that's a very dangerous place to be. So, I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that. Everybody's needs in this marketplace are a little bit different. And that's because all of your customers are a little bit different. And rightfully so, nobody treats their customers as being the same. And that's just a part of being a technical communicator and being in tune with the people that you're interacting with. As a vendor, I like to think that there are a lot of options and that there's no right choice for an organization. I think there are better and worse choices depending on your situation. I think that, actually I just had this conversation a few minutes ago. I tend to lean towards open standards, and I think that from what we're up against perspective, I think open standards are a little bit harder for a vendor because if something is complex to implement, it's not your problem. Like, you have to do it. So there's a lot of times where someone makes a decision and you have to comply with that, but that's also the beauty of open standards in that you don't get to make decisions that are easier as a vendor. So it's a really double-edged sword. I would never use anything that's proprietary from a content perspective. That's a personal choice. But yeah, I mean, it does create a slightly more difficult situation sometimes. That's kind of a roundabout answer.
Okay, we've got one question here. I have no soaps.
Hi, I'm Anton. Thank you for your talk. You talked about improving the findability of the content and increasing the total coverage of the available content. And I wanted to know what your take was on providing the answers in a diversity of formats. Is it enough to say we have the answer in a text file that is very findable? Or should we also say it's available in a very findable text file or whatever it is, but also available as contextual help, also available as video tutorials, also available as whatever other formats you can think of?
What do your users think?
That's probably the answer to the question, yeah.
So I mean, so that's kind of a rude answer to that question, but I think it does kind of get to the heart of it, in that a text file could be totally fine for some situations. So like an API, for example, like we don't create videos about our API. We basically provide text files. There's no images or anything. But if it's a complex user interface that's got a lot of conceptual aspects to it, those types of things, I think videos can be really helpful. I just don't think that there is a purely right answer for that. I think you kind of find out when you listen. And I think you can listen directly, or I think you can listen based on how people are interacting with the different layers of your support for your company.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else?
Gosha.
Sorry.
I haven't used easyDITA, so this is related to easyDITA basically. Does that allow you to enable to push right information to the right user at the right time when the user need it? So does that resolve that findability problem?
So it contributes. So I don't want to get into. I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't do anything about our software up here. So I don't really want to get into that because it's not really why I'm up here. But easyDITA, as a component content management system, as many component content management systems can be, are part of that process. So the ability to create the right content for the right user it's kind of impossible without component content.
Yeah.
So if you think about
pushing the same to the contextual aspect, basically. I mean, let's say if I'm stuck at some situation, at some place, so at that time, immediately I receive something that can help me go ahead and complete the process, something like that.
Okay, so I see. So your question is specifically around context-sensitive help. So again, it can contribute to that aspect. A number of our customers have implemented context-sensitive help systems. I think almost all of them are different. And it depends on the software package or the user interface they're interacting with. So, context-sensitive help, if you're working with a printer, might be an embedded thing that says don't push that button. But with a software package, it might be stuck and you click on something and it knows the page that you're on. And it can give you that kind of an assistance. So the thing that you get from using a CCMS that implements something like DITA is that you can create content that's in that size, that right byte size for that particular area, and then you can associate things with it, like IDs. Those are usually used in context-sensitive help, so programmers can grab onto them and stick them places, or metadata. And metadata can be used to classify a person. So for instance, you might have a topic which is specifically for American males, and that would be sent to me. And you might have a different version that's for people in Poland. And the ability to filter content and manage it as components is going to give you the ability to build those other systems downstream. Which I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I think that when you buy something like a component content management system, you need to look at it as part of an overall ecosystem. If you buy something and a vendor tells you they're going to solve all of your problems with this, they are lying to you. This is a thing that is not technology and it's not people. It's a combination of both of those things. And it's a big ecosystem that has to work together. So one of the things you may do is you may have publishing that sends a PDF to like SharePoint, maybe. And that's there because the technicians in the field have like a synchronization mechanism that puts that PDF on their tablet, and they crawl around in tunnels all day and they don't have internet. And that's a completely legitimate use case, but it's not one that you'd ever get from a single system. So again, getting back to my rant about open standards, when you're using an open standard, you can go to all the people that work with that open standard in their own specialized ways, and they can help you in their own little specialized ways. So it kind of gives you the ability to build your tapestry, to make your ecosystem the one that works for you. And context-sensitive help is probably one that it sounds like might be really good for you guys. It may not be good for everybody here. You know, some people don't have that type of an implementation. So yeah, just think of it as part of the solution.
Okay, that was the last question.